Hey guys, Lost here. Something has been on my mind lately and it is a topic that I wanted to share with you guys. Over the past almost 2 decades now, the gaming community has grown and diversified tremendously. With new shooters, new MMOs, new RPGs, and new genres of games entirely coming to the market. Not only that, but the amount of time, money, and effort put into massive titles has increased exponentially. With new engines changing the graphics and changing the way we play games, the gaming community is almost unrecognizable from that of its infancy. So with all these massive increases to gaming, you have to ask, what made the old games of the 90s and 2000s so much fun to play? And how come do I continue to find myself downloading the latest games only to brush them off after a couple weeks and get bored with them? Why were the Call of Duties, the World of Warcrafts, the Halos, and the RuneScapes so much more fun to play and seemed to offer an infinite amount of hours to play in it when they were just a skeleton of what they are now? And why have no new games been able to fill that gap that a lot of those old games left in their legacy? Well, I know that's kind of a lengthy list of questions to answer, and I probably don't have any hard facts to give, but let's take a nostalgia trip back through time and see if we can come up with some answers. Now, this is a massive topic to tackle. You know, should I start in the 90s when the Elder Scrolls and the Fallouts first made their debut? Do I start in the 2000s when the Call of Duties and Halos first came out? Or do I go all the way to 2007 when I believe the gaming community finally said, it's okay to make AAA games rather than just have a couple people doing it? So let's just start off with my first experiences in gaming, and that was with Halo Combat Evolved around 2002. Now granted, at that time I was easily a decade under the minimum mature rating, but we were just killing aliens and my parents were okay with my brother and I playing it. However, whatever you think of the Halo franchise in its current state, that doesn't really matter. Halo 1 is undeniably one of the games that absolutely brought gaming to the 21st century and reshaped how we played FPSs today. Halo 1 was a massive success, and without it, Microsoft likely wouldn't have been able to bring the Xbox to the levels it was at for so long. Let me tell you guys, Halo 1 was my freaking jam. For at least the first 2 to 3 years of my gaming experience, that is the only game me and my brother played. We could quote every line, speedrun through any level, and to this day I can still hop on almost any one of the older Halo multiplayers, get number 1 on the leaderboard, and then walk off only to do it again the next time I hop on. I'm telling you guys, Halo is in my blood. Halo was extremely innovative for the time, had a great story, great narrative, great voice acting, and was a lot of fun to play. And if you wanted a challenge, you could easily set the difficulty to legendary and have an extremely challenging and memorable time. Perhaps it was just my little child mind or the fact that we didn't have any other options to play. Halo will always be memorable with me, and I'm sure memorable with so many other people as well. Over the next couple of years, gaming continued to set its roots in the modern day. And it was a time period where some pretty great and memorable games came out, like Call of Duty 2 and 3, Oblivion, Bully, Star Wars Battlefront 2, and even LEGO Star Wars was pretty popular for a while. These games were so popular, people have been begging for sequels to them for over a decade. Except for the Call of Duties, I think they can just stop. Historic games like Halo 2 kept the original framework and added on tremendously with new content and new features that vastly improved the game, while games like Bully and Battlefront 2 let you explore vast open worlds of your dreams. Though I can't say I ever dreamt of going to a boarding school, I think you know what I mean. Many of these games had something in common, the ability to go where we wanted, when we wanted, and to do what we wanted to do without any, or at least many, limitations. Or if it was not an open world RPG type game, then at the very least it got to take us to somewhere new that we would normally not be able to experience when we're just little kids playing video games in our rooms. In my opinion, I think that is why at least this era of oldies was so great, because a large generation of kids that played games at the time, these things were brand new to us, and it gave us a complete sense of exploration at the time. I find this to be true with mostly every new generation of gamers. If you look back into the 80s and 90s, I'm sure people will say, oh no, this was the real OG game at the time because I played it as a kid and it just blew my mind. Now don't get me wrong, these games are great games, there's no denying that, but I also want to say that we were likely kids at the time and our view of things were different. everything was new. Star Wars Battlefront 2 allowed you to wage war on dozens of different planets, whether you're playing as a clone trooper or a droid. You could even be your favorite Jedi. Overall, it was really the amount of freedom that the game gave you that made it so memorable and such a joy to play and never get bored of. Even better, the gameplay was simple, though the menus were kind of confusing to me as a kid and I could never really figure out exactly what I was trying to do. I still loved playing the game. In fact, when the Xbox Live servers shut down from the original Xbox, Star Wars Battlefront 2 was the second most played Xbox Live game, just under Halo 2. I'm not sure if people really appreciate how awesome that game truly was. Also, in this mid-2000 range, a new game genre started to appear on the mainstream, and that was the MMO. In 2004, we saw the release of RuneScape 2 and World of Warcraft, both of which were still years away from their peak. The idea that you could play an RPG online with friends at the time was just so cool. During this time, we were still within the realm of original games, still a couple years away before the AAA titles took over and continued to pump out sequel after sequel after sequel and boring us as the gaming community to death. Also, between 2001 and 2007, the overall worldwide video game revenue almost doubled from $35 billion in 2001 to $61 billion in 2007. It was pretty clear that the time of smaller companies making more original games was about to come to an end and the AAA titles were about to take over. Now, starting here in 2007, this is really the time, like I said, when the gaming market became AAA. Now, for a while, this was not a bad thing at all. In 2007, Halo 3 came out, Modern Warfare 1, Assassin's Creed, God of War, BioShock, Mass Effect, and The Witcher. All of those games, we are playing their sequels today. However, at the time, these games were absolutely revolutionary, with Halo 3 still remaining one of the top most sold Xbox 360 games of all time. And the year after that, Fallout 3 and Grand Theft Auto 4 came out. It's also important to note that the MMO genre still had not hit its peak after all this time. It still had about 2 years to go before even WoW hit its highest amount of players. This really was a new era of video games, and for the time being, it looked like things were going well. Halo 3 was a massive success. Like I said, I certainly played a lot of it. During that time, I played quite a bit of RuneScape as the MMO genre really reached its height throughout the beginning of the 2010s. I was also a wonderful fan of the Assassin's Creed series. I put quite a few hours into those massive open worlds that were so cool and so detailed. And I played Grand Theft Auto, which were mind-blowing with its graphics and physics. All of this really came to a head in 2011 with the release of The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, which is still one of the most played single-player games today. From about 2007 to the early 2010s, that was the last time in gaming that games came out that I actually wanted to continue to come back and play even years down the road. Which brings us to today, where sequel after sequel are pumped out by AAA game companies in an attempt to rekindle their glory days. AAA companies continue to hype us up for their new title, only to have us be let down when it finally releases. So much so that I almost never trust any new AAA title coming out. The same reused content is pumped out again and again, and honestly, I think a lot of the community is bored. So let's revert back here to the overall premise of this video. Why were the games so much more fun when we were kids? And overall, it really is just a couple things. One, the games back then were newer at the time. The gaming industry was not as big and the AAA title was not as common. That combined with the exploratory nature of us kids and our wild imaginations probably hyped up the games tremendously when we played them, and there's nothing we could have done about that. But there's a little more. According to an article written by Harvard Business Review, people don't like making choices. Choices are hard. I mean, what if you make the wrong choice? With every game under the sun seemingly out nowadays, every game's a little bit different. It offers something a little bit more. Very rarely do you ever get a AAA title that does one thing specifically very well. Usually games nowadays are pretty watered down in an attempt to appeal to a wide variety of audiences so that they can make the most money. Rather than a game sticking to one type of playstyle or one type of genre of game, a game will try to encompass a little bit of everything so that everybody will want to come play their game. When in reality, if you're a little bit good at everything, you are great at nothing. That is where some of the best games come from, where a game knows who it is, what it is, and what specifically it's trying to accomplish. I mean, just look at some of the top streamed games on Twitch right now. CSGO, League of Legends, Battlegrounds, Hearthstone, Fortnite, Overwatch, and Grand Theft Auto 5. Those are all games that are successful because they are good at what they do. And why many of the old games were so fun and people still want to go back to them. Whether you think they're good or not, that's not what we're arguing here. And looking back through the history of gaming, those are the games that really stand out. So we are getting to the end here. I hope I've successfully answered the question, at least to some extent, of why games seem so much better when we were kids. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe for more content like this, and I will see you guys later.